Welcome, dear dreamer, to another night with Whispers of the Night. Tonight, let's slow everything down together. Here on Whispers of the Night, you don't need to do anything except listen and rest. Imagine opening a book gently at the end of a long day, the pages warm beneath your fingertips, the room quiet and kind. Above you, there is a sky that does not rush, a sky that holds drifting clouds without asking them to stay the same. Tonight's story lives therein, that soft space between remembering and letting go. It's a place where wandering is safe and becoming something new feels natural and calm. As you settle in, allow your breath to soften. Let the edges of the day blur just a little. The story will meet you where you are and carry you forward, slowly and peacefully, just like a cloud moving across a quiet sky. Before the story begins, let's take a moment to relax together. Gently close your eyes or lower your gaze and bring your attention to your breathing. Take a slow breath in through your nose and let it flow out through your mouth. Again, breathing in, feeling your chest rise softly, and breathing out, releasing the weight of the day. There's nothing you need to hold on to tonight. Let your shoulders drop. Allow your jaw to unclench. Feel your hands resting easily, supported, calm, with every breath out. Imagine the day drifting farther away, like clouds moving beyond the horizon. Thoughts don't need to stop. They can float past unbothered, leaving more space behind them. If you find comfort here, in these quiet moments, you're always welcome back. You may gently subscribe to Whispers of the Night, so this peaceful place is waiting whenever you need rest. No rush, no pressure, just an open door in the evening now. Return to your breathing, in slow and gentle, out even slower. Feel the surface beneath you, supporting your body completely. You don't need to stay alert. You don't need to listen perfectly. Simply let the sound of this voice keep you company as you sink deeper into calm. Your breathing finds its own rhythm, now easy, natural, unforced. The world grows quieter. The sky inside you grows wider. When you're ready, the story will begin. The life of a cloud that forgot its shape. The cloud that drifted awake. High above the quiet earth, where the sky feels wide and unhurried, a small cloud drifted without knowing that it was drifting. It had been there for longer than memory could hold, carried gently by invisible paths of air, resting when the wind slowed and gliding when it rose again. Time in the sky did not move the way it did below. It did not rush or press forward. It simply unfolded, soft and spacious, like a long, steady breath. At first, the cloud was only sensation, a mild warmth spread along its edges where sunlight touched it, not hot or sharp, but comforting, like a blanket warmed by the afternoon sun. Inside, there was a feeling of lightness, of being held without hands. The air around it hummed faintly, not as a sound, but as a presence steady, calm, patient. Then, slowly, gently, the cloud became aware. It noticed how it could stretch without effort, thinning at one side while gathering softly at another. It noticed how the wind nudged it along, not pushing, never forcing, only suggesting a direction. It noticed how other clouds floated nearby, some tall and proud, some wide and layered, some shaped like familiar things, rounded like sheep, pointed like mountains, stacked like quiet towers. The cloud watched them with mild interest, and then, with a small flicker of wondering, it turned its attention inward. What shape am I? The question did not arrive with fear. It came softly, like a thought that drifts in just before sleep. The cloud tried to gather itself, to pull its edges into something clear and recognizable. For a moment, it looked almost like a bird, wings stretching outward, but the shape slipped away before it could settle, dissolving back into soft curves and gentle folds. It tried again, becoming something rounder, something sturdier, a hill, perhaps, or a ship. Yet each time, the form faded as easily as breath on glass. Instead of feeling alarmed, the cloud felt curious. It lingered with that curiosity, letting it float alongside it. Perhaps, it thought, forgetting its shape was not a mistake. Perhaps, it was part of being what it was meant to be. The idea felt calm and open, leaving space instead of worry. Below, far beneath the drifting cloud, the earth rested in quiet harmony. Rolling fields stretched in gentle waves of green and gold, moving slowly when the breeze passed through tall grass. Narrow roads curved between small villages where stone houses stood close together, their windows catching the afternoon light. Smoke rose lazily from a few chimneys, drifting upward in thin, thoughtful lines. Birds traced slow circles above the fields, their calls soft and distant, blending into the steady hush of the land. Trees swayed just enough to be noticed, leaves whispering to one another in voices too gentle to interrupt the peace. On a small hill just beyond one of the villages, a girl lay in the grass. Her name was Ilya. She was not in a hurry. She rarely was. Ilya lay on her back, with her hands folded loosely on her stomach, her elbows sinking comfortably into the warm earth. The grass beneath her was soft and slightly uneven, dotted with tiny flowers that brushed against her sleeves when the breeze moved them. Ilya had hair the color of chestnuts, warmed by the sun, falling loosely around her shoulders. A few strands brushed her cheeks, and she let them be. Her eyes, a calm shade of brown, were turned upward, tracing the slow dance of clouds as they passed overhead. She liked this hill because it felt open and quiet at the same time. From here, she could see the roofs of the village below and the far line where fields met the sky. Sounds reached her gently distant voices, the lowing of cattle, the soft rustle of wind, but none of them demanded attention. They simply existed. Ilya liked watching clouds not because they turned into things, but because they didn't stay anything for long. As she watched, she noticed one cloud that seemed different from the others. It did not hurry past. It did not stretch into clear shapes the way some clouds did, as if showing off. Instead, it lingered, thinning and thickening, reshaping itself without settling into anything familiar. She followed it with her eyes as it drifted, her gaze slow and patient. "That one," she murmured softly, though there was no one nearby to hear. Her voice was quiet, almost part of the breeze. "You're thinking too much." The cloud high above felt a subtle warmth that was not from the sun. It did not hear Ilya's words, but something about the way it was being watched felt gentle and steady. It floated a little more slowly, as if pausing to rest. The wind shifted, brushing past the cloud's edges. It suggested movement toward the horizon, where the sky deepened into softer shades of blue. The cloud followed willingly, not resisting, not questioning as it moved. It noticed how the light changed. Sunlight slid across its surface, turning some parts bright and silver, while others remained pale and quiet. Shadows formed within it, not dark, but cool and calm, like places where the sun rested for a moment. The cloud wondered again about its shape, but the question felt lighter now. It was less about needing an answer and more about enjoying the asking. Below, Ilya shifted slightly, propping herself up on her elbows. She squinted gently, watching the cloud stretch and thin. It reminded her of the way thoughts felt, sometimes clear one moment, scattered the next, never staying in one place for very long. She liked that Ilya had always been comfortable with silence. It felt like a friend that sat beside her without needing to speak. When she lay on the hill, she felt as though the world slowed down just enough for her to notice it properly. A beetle crawled across a blade of grass near her hand. She watched it for a moment, then returned her gaze to the sky. The cloud drifted on, still unsure of what it was, but no longer worried by the uncertainty. It noticed other clouds gliding past, some gathering together, some breaking apart. None of them seemed troubled by change. They moved as they were moved, rested when they could, and transformed without complaint. Perhaps, the cloud thought, being unsure was simply another way of being gentle. Time passed in the slow, floating way it always did in the sky. The sun began its gradual descent, lowering itself toward the edge of the world. The light softened, warming from bright gold to a deeper amber. The cloud felt this change as a tender cooling along its edges, a signal not of ending, but of easing. It felt it, too. The air around her grew quieter, as if preparing for evening. Shadows lengthened across the fields below, stretching lazily as they moved. She lay back again, folding her hands, and let her eyes close halfway. She could still see the cloud through her lashes, a pale shape drifting toward the horizon. "I wonder where you're going," she whispered, not needing an answer. The cloud, guided by the wind, moved steadily onward. It did not know where it was going either, and for the first time, that felt comforting. There was no pressure to decide, no urgency to become anything specific. As the sky deepened in color, the cloud felt itself grow quieter inside. The curiosity remained, but it was wrapped now in a layer of calm acceptance. It allowed itself to stretch, too thin to gather again, without trying to hold on to any one form. Below, Ilya finally closed her eyes fully. The grass hummed softly beneath her, the earth warm and steady. The image of the cloud lingered in her thoughts, not as a shape, but as a feeling gentle, wandering, unburdened. When she opened her eyes again, the cloud had drifted farther away, its edges glowing faintly in the evening light. She watched until it became just another soft part of the sky. The wind carried the cloud onward, toward places it had not yet seen and changes it had not yet felt. The day slowly leaned into evening, and both the cloud and the girl rested in the knowledge that this drifting was only the beginning of something quiet and kind, waiting just beyond the fading light. Ilya and the Skywatcher's Hill. The path to Skywatcher's Hill was one Ilya knew as well as she knew her own breathing. It curved gently away from the village, winding through tall grasses and small clusters of wildflowers that nodded politely as she passed. The earth beneath her feet was firm but kind, holding the warmth of the day and giving it back slowly, as if it had nowhere else it needed to be. Ilya walked at an easy pace, unhurried and quiet. She carried a small notebook tucked under her arm, its cover softened by time and use. The pages inside held sketches made with a light hand clouds mostly, drawn not with sharp lines but with wandering curves, as if the pencil itself had been drifting. She never tried to label them. No names, no explanations, just impressions saved the way one might save a feeling. The hill rose gradually, not steep enough to demand effort, just enough to feel like a gentle invitation upward. When Ilya reached the top, the world opened around her in a wide, patient view. Fields stretched out in long, calm shapes, their colors deepening where shadows pooled between rows. The village roofs below reflected soft light, and beyond them, the land rolled onward until it met the pale edge of the sky. Skywatcher's Hill always felt like a place meant for listening. The grass bent easily beneath the breeze, whispering without words. The air moved in slow layers, warm near the ground and cooler higher up, brushing Ilya's face with a familiar touch. Above her, the sky rested in a wide expanse of blue, scattered with clouds that drifted as if they had all the time in the world. Ilya settled into her favorite spot, where the grass was slightly flattened from many afternoons spent lying there. She lowered herself carefully, stretching out on her back, the notebook resting beside her. Her fingers brushed the grass, feeling its thin blades and the tiny seeds clinging lightly to her skin. She took a slow breath in, then let it out, just as slowly. The sky seemed to breathe with her. Her eyes followed the clouds, moving from one to another, letting them pass without needing to hold on to any single shape. Some were wide and steady, others tall and faint, their edges dissolving into the blue. Then she saw it, the cloud she had noticed before. It was there again, drifting quietly, thinner than she remembered. Its edges were softer now, less defined, as if it were still deciding how much space it wanted to take up. It didn't stretch into playful shapes or gather itself boldly. It simply moved, slow and attentive, as though it were listening to something only it could hear. Ilya smiled, small and unforced. From high above, the cloud felt the familiar pull of the wind, gentle and patient. It carried the cloud along invisible paths, guiding without command. The cloud noticed the land below, the patchwork of fields, the quiet village, the steady curve of the hill. And then, as it had before, it felt that subtle warmth that was not sunlight. It sensed the girl. Elia's presence was a quiet point of steadiness beneath the drifting sky. She did nothing to call attention to herself. She did not wave or speak. She simply lay there, watching, without wanting anything in return. To the cloud, this felt like being seen in the softest possible way. The cloud allowed itself to thin even more, stretching slightly as the air lifted it. It did not try to form anything recognizable. It had learned that trying brought only gentle frustration, while allowing brought ease. It drifted, content to be undefined. The wind murmured around it, carrying whispers from higher layers of sky. These whispers spoke of other clouds, those that gathered and grew heavy, those that turned dark and poured themselves into rain, those that rose tall and powerful, shaping storms that crossed great distances. The cloud listened without concern. Those stories were interesting, but they did not feel like instructions. They felt like possibilities, waiting quietly, not demanding attention. The cloud felt no urgency to follow them. For now, drifting felt right. Below, Elia reached for her notebook. She opened it carefully, letting the pages fall to a blank space. She held her pencil loosely, not pressing hard, and began to draw. She did not try to copy the cloud exactly. Instead, she let her hand move the way the cloud seemed to move light, wandering, pausing when it wanted to pause. The lines curved and softened, overlapping gently. When the shape drifted away from what she thought she was drawing, she let it. This, she felt, was how it was meant to be, as she sketched. Ilia's thoughts moved slowly, like the clouds themselves. She wondered about the one above her, not with worry, but with interest. It seemed different from the others, not broken or lost, just open. Maybe some things don't need to decide what they are, she thought. The idea settled in her chest with a sense of relief she hadn't known she was. Carrying the cloud, floating high above, felt the day begin to soften. The sun shifted, its light growing warmer, less bright. The cloud's edges glowed faintly, then dimmed again as it passed through layers of air. It noticed how the wind cooled slightly, carrying hints of evening. It also noticed how the girl below remained. She did not move much. Sometimes she shifted her weight or adjusted the notebook. Sometimes she closed her eyes for a few moments, then opened them again, as if checking to see whether the sky was still there. The cloud felt no need to hurry. Being noticed like this, without expectation, without demand, felt grounding in a way it had not known before. Even without shape, even without certainty, it felt as though it belonged. Time passed in the gentle way it always did on Skywatcher's Hill. The breeze carried the scent of grass and distant fields. A bird called once, then again, its voice, fading as it flew farther away. Shadows stretched slowly, laying themselves across the land like long, quiet blankets. Elia closed her notebook and set it aside. She folded her hands on her stomach and let her eyes rest fully on the sky. The cloud had drifted a little farther east, but it was still there, thinner now, almost translucent in places. She did not feel sad watching it move away. Instead, she felt calm, that there was something comforting in knowing that not all connections needed to stay close to be real. Some were meant to drift, to change distance, to exist without holding tightly. The cloud felt the cooling air more clearly now. The wind shifted, guiding it eastward, with a little more intention, though still without force. The cloud followed easily, letting itself be carried. As it moved, it took one last long look at the hill below. The girl was still there, small against the wide earth, her presence steady and warm. The cloud did not feel like it was leaving something behind. It felt like it was carrying something forward. A sense of quiet acceptance settled within it. Below, Ilya watched until the cloud's pale form blended with the deeper colors of the evening sky. When it finally became difficult to pick out from the others, she let her gaze soften. She lay there a while longer, feeling the coolness of dusk gather around her. The sky darkened gently, not all at once, but in slow layers. The first hints of twilight brushed the horizon. When she finally stood, brushing grass from her clothes, she felt light and unburdened. She tucked the notebook under her arm and began the walk back down the hill. Her steps slow and thoughtful. Above her, the cloud continued its quiet journey, drifting into deeper shades of sky, listening to the wind and the stories it carried. It did not know where it was going, only that the movement felt right. As night approached and the air grew stiller, both the cloud and the girl carried with them the same gentle understanding that some things are whole even without shape, and some connections remain, no matter how far they drift. And somewhere higher still, beyond what either of them could see, the escape. When the wind carries memories, night loosened its hold on the sky slowly, as if it were reluctant to leave. The stars dimmed one by one, not vanishing all at once, but fading gently into the deep blue that waited beneath them. The moon rested, low, its pale glow softening as the first hints of morning stirred at the edges of the world. High above the sleeping land, the cloud drifted in this quiet in-between time. The air around it felt different, now cooler, thinner, and lighter, as though the sky itself were slowly stretching awake. A steady current of wind rose from below, careful and unhurried, lifting the cloud higher. Without surprise or strain, the cloud allowed itself to rise. It did not resist the movement, nor did it rush to follow. It simply went, carried upward, as naturally as a thought, drifting through a half-dream. As it ascended, the world below softened. Shapes blurred into gentle patterns of shadow and faint color. Rivers became thin silver threads, forests darkened into calm, textured blankets, and towns rested quietly, their lights dim and scattered like fallen stars. Here, higher in the sky, something stirred within the cloud. It was not a memory in the way people remember things, with clear pictures and names. It was more like a feeling returning familiar, warm and distant all at once. The air carried traces of what the cloud had once been and would be again. A hint of rain clung to it, cool and soothing. A whisper of mist brushed against its edges, reminding it of mornings long ago when it had rested against mountain peaks, drifting lazily along stone and pine. Sunlight, too, left its quiet mark. The cloud remembered how it had once softened bright, rays spreading them gently over fields and hills so that nothing below felt overwhelmed. It remembered being shade and brightness at the same time, a calm presence passing overhead. The cloud realized then that it had not forgotten its shape at all. It had simply known many. Each form it had held had been real in its own time, meant for its own moment. None were meant to stay. The understanding settled through the cloud like a deep, peaceful breath, easing a tension it hadn't known it carried. The wind moved around it again, steady and reassuring. It did not speak in words, but in motion and warmth, in direction without command. It guided the cloud forward and slightly east, toward where the sky lightened almost imperceptibly. Below, the land remained asleep in a small house near the edge of the village. Ilya stirred beneath her blanket. Morning crept quietly into her room, slipping through the window in pale bands of gray and gold. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of grass and earth from outside. She opened her eyes slowly, not startled, not hurried. For a moment, she lay still, listening. The house was quiet. Somewhere far off, a bird called once, then settled again. The world felt calm and held. Ilya sat up and rubbed her eyes gently. She moved to the window and pushed it open just enough to let the morning air in. The sky greeted her in soft colors, light blue, washed with thin streaks of cloud. She searched it instinctively, her gaze drifting to the place where she had last seen the wandering cloud. It was gone. She noticed the absence clearly, yet it did not feel empty. Instead, it felt like a quiet space left intentionally open. Ilya rested her elbows on the window frame and breathed in, feeling the cool air fill her chest and leave again slowly. She smiled, small and thoughtful. Somewhere beyond what she could see, the cloud was still drifting, still being carried. The idea felt comforting rather than sad. After a while, Ilya pulled on a light sweater and stepped outside with her notebook tucked under her arm. The village was waking gently. Doors opened softly. Footsteps sounded faint and unhurried. The day did not rush anyone. She walked to a small wooden bench near the edge of the field, where tall grass shimmered with early dew. Sitting down, she opened her notebook and turned to a clean page. Her pencil rested lightly between her fingers. She began to write, not a description, not a name, just a few quiet lines about a cloud that wandered without needing to decide what it was yet, about how it drifted higher and lighter when it stopped trying to hold itself still, about how leaving did not always mean losing. She paused often, letting the pencil hover, listening to the soft sounds around her, the breeze moving through grass, the faint hum of waking insects, the distant murmur of water above her, unseen but present. The cloud continued its journey. The wind carried it over a broad river that curved through the land like a slow, shining ribbon. Morning light touched the water, breaking into soft reflections that shimmered and shifted. The cloud drifted over forests where treetops swayed gently, their shadows layered and calm. It passed over hills and valleys, over fields marked by careful rows, over rooftops that caught the first warmth of the day. With each mile it traveled, the cloud felt lighter. It no longer tried to gather itself into a single form. Instead, it allowed its edges to stretch and thin, to soften into the surrounding air. In places, it became almost transparent, a faint veil across the sky that light passed through easily. This felt right. The cloud noticed how the sunlight changed as it filtered through its thinning body. Below, the light spread more evenly, gentler somehow. The cloud felt useful without effort, present without strain. It understood now that certainty was not required to belong. As the sun rose higher, warmth gathered slowly within the cloud. Not heat, but a comfortable glow, like the feeling of being awake without needing to move. The sky around it brightened, opening wide and clear, inviting rather than demanding. The wind, still guiding, eased its hold just enough for the cloud to drift freely within its path. There was no single direction, only a general sense of forward motion toward a horizon touched with warmer tones. The cloud did not wonder what waited there. It trusted the movement. Below, Elia closed her notebook and stood, feeling the morning fully arrive. She stretched her arms above her head, breathing deeply. The sky felt wide and kind. She felt, in her own small way, a similar lightness settling within her. Some things didn't need answers yet. Some journeys were meant to unfold slowly, guided by quiet currents and gentle trust. High above, the cloud floated onward, thinner now, softer, becoming part of the light itself. It drifted toward a place where the sky warmed and the air shifted, where another change waited patiently, ready to greet it without hurry. And as the day continued to open, both the cloud and the girl carried forward a calm understanding that becoming is not a single moment, but a long, peaceful movement carried by the wind. The soft lesson of rain. The air grew warmer as the cloud drifted onward, not suddenly, but with a gradual ease, as though the sky itself were leaning closer. The light around it softened, turning from clear brightness into a gentle glow that seemed to wrap the cloud on all sides. The wind slowed its guiding touch, no longer lifting so much as holding, and in that stillness, the cloud felt something new. It felt heavy, not heavy with worry or strain, but with fullness, the way a sponge feels after soaking in cool water, or the way the air feels just before a quiet afternoon nap. Inside the cloud, tiny droplets began to gather. They did not rush or crowd one another. They came together patiently, drawn by an unspoken understanding, responding to a slow and natural invitation. The cloud noticed this change with calm curiosity. It did not resist the gathering weight, nor did it cling to the lightness it had known before. Instead, it listened inward, sensing how each small droplet felt complete on its own, yet connected to the whole. A gentle realization spread through the cloud, settling like a warm thought. Becoming rain was not losing itself. It was sharing itself. The idea felt peaceful and right. There was no fear in it, no sharp edge of ending, only a quiet sense of purpose, as if this moment had been waiting patiently all along. Below, the sky dimmed slightly as the cloud thickened, though the world did not grow dark. The light simply softened, turning mellow and kind. In the village, Elia walked along the familiar path between stone houses, her steps unhurried. The air around her shifted, growing cooler, carrying the promise of something gentle. She felt the first drop before she saw it. It landed lightly on her cheek, barely more than a touch, cool and surprising. Elia paused and looked up. The sky above was a smooth blanket of pale gray.com, and even without drama or urgency, another drop followed, then another, until the air filled with a soft drizzle. It was not a storm. There was no thunder, no sharp wind, just a quiet rain that darkened the stones beneath her feet and drew out the earthy scent of soil and leaves. The village responded gently. Roofs began to glisten. Window ledges caught tiny beads of water. Puddles formed slowly in the shallow dips of the road. Ilia tilted her face upward and closed her eyes. The rain touched her skin with cool fingertips, and she smiled. In her mind, she thought of the wandering cloud, imagining it above her, finally, resting in this new way. She pictured it letting go without disappearing, becoming something that could be felt everywhere at once. "It's okay," she whispered, though she wasn't sure who the words were for. High above, the cloud began to release itself. The droplets fell one by one, not hurried, not forced, simply following the gentle pull of gravity. Each drop carried a piece of the cloud with it, a soft farewell and a quiet greeting combined. The cloud did not feel smaller as it shared itself. Instead, it felt open, expansive, as though it were stretching into the world below. The rain fell over fields where the earth welcomed it eagerly. Dry soil darkened and softened, drinking in the moisture. Seeds nestled below the surface stirred, though they would not rise just yet. Leaves lifted slightly, catching drops that slid along their veins before falling to the ground. In the village, the rain tapped softly on rooftops, a gentle rhythm that filled the spaces between thoughts. Doors closed, not in haste, but with care. People moved indoors quietly, their footsteps muted by the damp ground. Ilia continued walking, letting the drizzle settle into her hair and sleeves. She did not hurry home. The rain felt like a companion rather than an interruption. Each drop cooled the warmth of the day, easing the air into something calmer, more restful. Above, the cloud experienced the falling not as loss, but as motion. Each release felt like a breath exhaled slowly, intentionally. It remembered the wind, the lightness, the drifting, and understood that all of it was still part of this moment. Nothing had been taken away. It had only changed where it was. As the rain continued, the cloud felt itself thinning, spreading, becoming less defined. Yet instead of fear, there was a deep sense of ease. The cloud was no longer only in the sky. It was in the fields, the roofs, the air, the skin of the girl below. It was everywhere. Ilia reached the edge of the village and turned toward home. The rain followed her softly, tracing her steps with small, shining marks that faded as quickly as they appeared. She passed the small garden near her house, noticing how the flowers lifted their heads, how the soil darkened and settled. Inside, the house was quiet and warm. Ilia slipped off her shoes and hung her damp sweater by the door. She moved to the window and looked out, watching the rain fall in steady, gentle lines. She felt calm and comforted, wrapped in the sound and scent of it all. Outside, the rain began to ease. The droplets grew lighter, fewer, until they slowed into a fine mist that hovered close to the ground. From the earth, a soft veil of moisture rose, blurring edges and smoothing shapes. The world seemed to breathe out slowly, satisfied. Above, what remained of the cloud drifted in this gentle haze, its presence no longer concentrated in one place. It felt both gone and everywhere at once. a quiet truth settling into its being. Nothing truly disappears. The cloud understood. It only changes form. Elia rested her forehead against the cool glass of the window, watching the mist rise from the fields beyond the village. The sky lightened again, pale and open, as if it had simply rearranged itself. She felt a sense of quiet renewal, though she could not have named it. The day felt fresh, softened, ready, somewhere above and around her. The cloud rested in its new state, preparing without effort for whatever gentle transformation might come next. Becoming light again. Morning arrived without announcement, slipping quietly into the world as though it did not wish to disturb anyone still dreaming. The air held a fresh, clean coolness left behind by the night's rain, and the earth rested beneath it, darkened and nourished. Light gathered slowly along the horizon, spreading in soft layers of pale gold and gentle blue, from the fields and rooftops, from leaves and stones and the wide backs of hills. A faint mist began to rise. It lifted as if waking from a long, peaceful sleep, curling upward in thin, wandering threads. What had once been rain-cool drops that tapped softly on the world now returned to the air, lighter and freer, answering the warmth of the sun high above. The cloud felt this change as a familiar invitation. It did not reform all at once. There was no sudden gathering, no rush to become whole again. Instead, the cloud emerged gradually, gently, in many small wisps that spread across the sky like a shared breath. Each wisp drifted on its own quiet path, rising and stretching, touching the air and then letting go. The cloud felt no need to pull itself together. It understood now that it did not have to be one thing to exist, that sunlight moved through these thin strands easily, turning them bright in places and nearly invisible in others. From below, the sky looked open and spacious, alive with subtle motion. The cloud was there, and yet it was also everywhere. The light softened and the air shimmered dotted, felt light in a new wane, not the lightness of drifting without knowing, but the lightness of understanding. The cloud remembered the rain, the mist, the many shapes it had worn, and felt no urge to choose among them. All of them were true. All of them belonged. Below, Ilya stepped once more onto the path that led to Skywatcher's Hill. The morning air brushed her cheeks with cool fingers, carrying the scent of damp grass and clean earth. She walked slowly, enjoying the way the ground felt firm beneath her feet, the way the world seemed newly washed and ready. Her notebook rested under her arm, its pages waiting patiently. She did not hurry to open it. First, she wanted to see. The hill greeted her, as it always did, rising gently. Its grass still beaded with moisture that caught the light in tiny, shining points. When she reached the top, Ilya paused, breathing in the wide open view. The fields below glowed softly, and the village roofs reflected the sun in quiet flashes. Above her, the sky was different. She noticed it immediately. Thin clouds drifted there, delicate and spread wide, catching the sunlight in faint, luminous threads. They were not the bold-shaped clouds of midday, nor the heavy ones that promised rain. These were light and wandering, as if they had just learned how to be again. Elia smiled, warmth spreading through her chest. She felt as though she were greeting an old friend, changed but familiar, present in a new and gentle way. She lowered herself into the grass, settling comfortably, and opened her notebook at last. Her pencil moved easily this time. She did not try to capture what the clouds looked like. She let her hand follow how they felt. The lines were soft and loose, drifting across the page without sharp edges. When her pencil wandered off course, she let it. When a line faded into another, she welcomed it. Above, the cloud noticed the girl once more. It felt her attention as a quiet warmth rising from the earth, steady and unassuming. She did not look at it with expectation or curiosity alone. She looked with recognition. The cloud drifted a little closer, its wisps stretching and thinning, glowing softly where the sunlight touched them. There was joy in this moment, but it was not loud or urgent. It was the kind of joy that rests easily, content to simply be. The cloud felt no concern about forgetting its shape anymore. It understood that shape was only one way of existing, and not the most important one. Movement was its true nature. Presence. The wind carried the wisps slowly, guiding them across the sky without pushing. Each strand moved at its own pace, some rising, some drifting sideways, some fading into the brightness until they could barely be seen. None of them hurried to rejoin the others. They did not need to. Ilya looked up from her notebook often, letting her eyes follow the drifting light. The sun climbed higher, warming her shoulders and the top of her head. The grass beneath her dried. Slowly, the cool dampness easing into comfortable warmth. She felt peaceful, grounded, and quietly happy. As the morning passed, the clouds continued their gentle dance. They thinned further in places, becoming almost part of the sky itself. In other places, they gathered briefly, creating soft patches of shade that moved lazily across the land below. The cloud felt this as ease, no effort, no resistance. It was no longer trying to be understood, no longer asking questions about what it should become. It was content to move with the air, to soften the light, to exist wherever it was needed. Elia closed her notebook and lay back, resting her head in the grass. She watched the sky without drawing now, without thinking of words or lines. She simply watched, breathing slowly, matching her rhythm to the slow movement above. Time passed gently, unnoticed by afternoon. The light shifted again, warming into deeper hues. The sky softened, its blue turning richer, calmer. The clouds were fewer now, their wisps spread thin and wide, lingering like faint memories of morning. Ilya sat up and brushed grass from her clothes. She took one last look at the sky, letting the image settle into her thoughts. It felt complete, even without clear edges. As she made her way down the hill, the cloud drifted on, following the long, unhurried arc of the day. It felt ready for rest, not because it was tired, but because it trusted that whatever came next would arrive gently, just as this moment had. The afternoon leaned quietly toward evening, and the sky held both the cloud and the girl in the same calm understanding that nothing needed to be fixed or defined, only felt. Somewhere ahead, the light would soften further, and the sky would open into stillness once more, carrying with it the promise of another peaceful change, waiting patiently to unfold. sky that holds everything. The evening arrived the way a gentle thought does, without effort and without hurry. The sun lowered itself slowly, easing toward the edge of the world, and the sky responded by softening its colors. Bright blues faded into warmer shades, brushed with gold and lavender, then deepened into calm layers of dusky rose and quiet gray. Nothing rushed to change. Everything moved at its own unspoken pace. High above the land, the cloud drifted within this wide and welcoming sky. It no longer thought of itself as a single shape, or even as many shapes. It felt instead like part of something larger, something that stretched far beyond edges or names. It was shade when the light needed softening, brightness when the sky opened, memory when the air held traces of what had been, and breath when the wind passed through. The cloud did not feel separate anymore. It felt held. The sky around it was vast and gentle, a space that did not ask questions or offer answers. It simply existed, allowing everything within it to be exactly as it was. The cloud rested in that understanding, no longer drifting in search of anything, no longer wondering what it might become next. It already was. Below, the land settled into evening alongside the sky. Fields darkened into deeper greens and browns, their edges blurring as shadows stretched and mingled. The village grew quieter. Doors closed softly. Lamps glowed faintly behind windows, warm and steady, like small stars resting on the earth. Crickets began their song, one at first, then another, until the sound wove itself into a steady, soothing rhythm. The air cooled gently, brushing against skin and leaves with equal care. Ilya made her way once more to Skywatcher's Hill. She walked slowly, her steps light and familiar, the path rising beneath her, as if greeting an old friend. The grass whispered under her feet, bending easily, still warm from the day. She carried no notebook this time. Her hands were empty, relaxed at her sides. When she reached the top, she lay down without hesitation, settling into the grass as naturally as breathing. The earth beneath her felt firm and comforting, holding her weight without effort. She folded her hands on her stomach and let her gaze drift upward. The sky stretched endlessly above her. Colors shifted slowly, blending and softening, becoming deeper and calmer with each passing moment. Ilya watched without needing to name what she saw. She did not look for shapes or patterns. She simply watched the light change, the way one might listen to a familiar song without following the words above her. The cloud drifted through twilight, its presence subtle but complete. It did not stand out, and it did not disappear. It was simply there, part of the sky's gentle breathing. The cloud felt no need to move quickly or to stay still. It rested in the quiet motion of the evening, letting the cooling air pass through it, letting the fading light soften its edges until they blended seamlessly with the sky around it. Stars began to appear, not all at once, but one by one, as if the sky were carefully placing them. Each star arrived softly, without announcement, adding to the calm rather than breaking it. The cloud felt them as faint points of cool brightness, distant and reassuring. Ilya noticed them too. Her eyes followed the first star as it settled into view, then another and another. She smiled faintly, feeling small in a way that was comforting rather than lonely. She felt safe. The vastness above her did not feel empty. It felt full of space, full of quiet, full of possibilities that did not need to be explored tonight. The cloud understood this feeling deeply. It no longer held onto memories as separate moments. They flowed through it, instant mist, rising at dawn, rain tapping on rooftops, sunlight warming fields, wind guiding without force. All of it existed together, not as a story to be told, but as a presence to be felt. The sky held every version of the cloud without judgment. It held the cloud when it was drifting and unsure, when it was heavy with rain, when it was thin and light, when it was nearly invisible. It held all of it with the same quiet care. Below, Ilya breathed slowly, matching her rhythm to the soft sounds around her. Crickets sang steadily. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called once, its voice low and gentle, then fell silent again. The air carried the scent of grass and earth, cool and grounding, she thought, without words. Of the cloud, not as something above her, but as part of the sky that held her too. She understood, in the quiet way that comes just before sleep, that she did not need to have everything figured out. She was allowed to change, to grow, to rest without knowing exactly who she would become. That thought wrapped around her like a blanket. The cloud drifted on, barely moving now, content to exist within the sky's wide embrace. It did not look ahead or behind. It stayed with the present moment, where nothing was missing and nothing needed to be added, leaving behind a cool calm that settled into the land. The sky darkened into deeper blues, rich and quiet, the stars growing clearer as they held their places. Ilya's eyelids grew heavy. She let them close for a moment, then opened them again, watching the stars until their light blurred softly. She felt the earth beneath her, steady and patient. She felt the sky above her, vast and kind. She belonged between the two. The cloud felt this balance as well, suspended gently between earth and space, part of the sky's long, quiet breath. It knew now that it would continue to change, as all things do, but that change no longer felt uncertain. It felt like rest as the night settled fully. The sky became a calm blanket stretched over the world. The cloud drifted softly within it, no longer searching, no longer wondering, simply being dot, and beneath that sky, Ilya rested on the hill, her breathing slow and even, her thoughts drifting as gently as the clouds above. Nothing needed to be solved. Tonight, nothing needed to be decided. The sky held everything, stars, dreams, and quiet moments, guiding both the cloud and the listener into a peaceful, timeless rest. The sky has done enough for tonight. So have you. Let your thoughts drift like quiet clouds, held gently by the dark, peaceful sky. Rest. Now nothing else is needed.